The most dangerous enemy you will ever face is not the one standing in front of you. It is the one you never saw coming. History remembers warriors, men who charged into battle with fire in their eyes and blood on their hands. We celebrate them. We name cities after them. We build statues in their honor. But Sun Tzu was not a warrior. He was something far more terrifying. He was a man who could walk into a conflict and end it before it began, who could dismantle an enemy's power without ever raising a sword, who could destroy kingdoms, reputations, and entire armies using nothing but strategy, patience, and the ruthless application of invisible force. Most people think victory requires confrontation. Sun Tzu knew that confrontation is what you do when you have already failed at strategy. The 7 methods we are going to discuss today, they are not comfortable, they are not polite, and they are absolutely ruthless. Stay with me. There is a line in The Art of War that most people read and immediately misunderstand. Sun Tzu wrote, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." People hear this and think he is talking about peace, about avoiding conflict, about being the bigger person who walks away from the fight. He is talking about none of those things. He is talking about something far darker, far more calculated. The idea that the highest level of strategic mastery is not winning the fight. It is making the fight unnecessary, not because you are afraid of it, but because you have already won before it started. Think about what that means for a moment. If you are fighting, you are taking damage. You are expending resources. You are revealing your capabilities. You are giving your enemy information about how you think, how you move, and what you are capable of. But if you have already won before the fighting begins, you have paid none of those costs. You have revealed nothing. You have lost nothing. And your enemy is defeated not by your strength, but by the weight of inevitability that you constructed around them so slowly and so completely that they never even felt it happening. This is what Sun Tzu mastered. This is what we are going to break down today. 7 ruthless methods, each one more psychologically devastating than the last. And I want you to pay particular attention to the 5th method, because it is the one that Sun Tzu considered the most powerful of all. The one that does not just defeat your enemy, it makes them defeat themselves. Lesson 1. Control what your enemy believes. Sun Tzu wrote, "All warfare is based on deception, not on strength, not on numbers, not on weapons, on deception. And the most powerful form of deception is not lying. It is controlling the information your enemy uses to make decisions, so that every decision they make leads them exactly where you want them to go." Sun Tzu understood that your enemy is not defeated by your actions. They are defeated by their reactions to what they believe about your actions, which means that if you control what they believe, you control what they do. And if you control what they do, you have already won. This is not a metaphor. This is the literal foundation of every major military victory in ancient Chinese history. Consider how Sun Tzu himself applied this principle. Before any campaign, he invested enormous resources not in building larger armies, but in building false pictures of reality for his enemies. He would make a strong army appear weak, inviting his enemy to attack at what they thought was an advantage. He would make a weak position appear strong, causing his enemy to avoid it entirely. He would create the illusion of chaos where there was actually perfect order. and the illusion of order where there was a trap. His enemy was always fighting the wrong war, because they were responding to a reality that Sun Tzu had manufactured for them. In the modern world, this principle is everywhere, and most people are on the receiving end of it without knowing it. Every negotiation involves information management. Every competition involves controlling what your competitor believes about your position, your resources, and your intentions. Every relationship involves, to some degree, the management of perception. The person who controls the narrative controls the outcome. And the brutal truth that Sun Tzu would want you to understand is this: if you are not deliberately managing what others believe about you, someone else is managing it for you, and they are not doing it in your favor. Application: in your next important situation, before you act, ask yourself one question: what does the other person currently believe about my position? Is that belief accurate? And if it is not, is that working for me or against me? Because the moment you start thinking about reality as something that can be shaped, you have taken the first step toward the kind of strategic mastery that Sun Tzu spent his entire life teaching. But controlling beliefs is only the beginning, because the second method goes even deeper into something that your enemy cannot defend against, no matter how smart they are. Lesson 2. Attack what your enemy cannot defend. Sun Tzu wrote, "Attack where he is unprepared. Appear where you are not expected." This sounds simple, almost obvious. But the depth of what Sun Tzu is describing here goes far beyond military tactics. He is articulating a principle of strategic targeting that is as relevant in a boardroom or a courtroom today as it was on a battlefield 2,500 years ago. The principle is this: every person, every organization, every system has two kinds of defenses: the defenses they show and the defenses they actually have. Most people attack the visible defenses. They confront what is in front of them. They engage on the ground their enemy has chosen. They fight the battle that their enemy has prepared for. And they lose, not because they are weaker, but because they are predictable. Sun Tzu always attacked the invisible weakness, the thing that nobody was guarding, the assumption that nobody had questioned, the blind spot that the enemy did not even know existed. In 506 BC, the state of Wu under Sun Tzu's generalship faced the vastly more powerful state of Chu. By every conventional measure, Wu should have lost. Chu had more soldiers, more resources, more experience. Every general in the region knew this. Chu knew this. And because Chu knew this, they became comfortable. They stopped looking for threats they didn't expect. Sun Tzu attacked that comfort directly. Instead of marching on Chu's strongest border, where their defenses were concentrated, he led his army on a journey of nearly 1,000 miles through territory that Chu had deemed impassable, through marshes and mountains that nobody had ever used as a military route. He arrived not at Chu's front door, where the army was waiting, but at the back door that nobody had thought to lock. He took the capital of Chu, not by defeating their army, but by attacking the one place their army was not. In your own life, this method looks like this. When you face a powerful opponent, stop trying to beat them where they are strong. Study them long enough to find where they are not looking. Find the assumption they have made that nobody has challenged. Find the door they forgot to lock and walk through it quietly, The most ruthless victories in business, in law, in politics, they are almost never won on the obvious battlefield. They are won in the places that the powerful never thought to defend because they never thought anyone would look there. Open loop. But finding the undefended door is still a form of direct action. What comes next, the third method, is something entirely different. It is how Sun Tzu destroyed enemies without ever going near them at all. Lesson 3. Use your enemy's allies against him. Sun Tzu wrote, "The skillful employer of men will employ the wise man, the brave man, the covetous man, and the stupid man. Every man has a nature, and every nature, in the hands of a skilled strategist, can be turned into a weapon." This is perhaps the most psychologically sophisticated method in Sun Tzu's entire arsenal. Not attacking your enemy directly, not attacking his position or his defenses, but working through the people around him, his allies, his advisors, his subordinates, to create the conditions of his destruction from within. Sun Tzu called this the use of agents, and he dedicated an entire chapter of the art of war to it, which tells you how seriously he took it. The logic is elegant and ruthless. A direct attack on a powerful enemy is expensive, risky, and unpredictable. But if you can turn his own inner circle against him, if you can create doubt, suspicion, division, and disloyalty within his own camp, then you have weaponized his greatest strength against him, because his strength came from unity, and unity, once broken from the inside, cannot be repaired from the outside. History provides one of the most stunning examples of this in the story of Cao Cao and Zhou Yu during the Red Cliffs campaign of 208 AD. Cao Cao had an enormous army, perhaps 1,000,000 men by some accounts. Zhou Yu had a fraction of that. A direct confrontation would have been suicide, so Zhou Yu did not fight directly. He used deception to convince Cao Cao that two of his most trusted naval commanders, men who actually were loyal, were secretly working with the enemy. He manufactured evidence, he created doubt, and Cao Cao, a brilliant man who should have known better, executed both commanders in a fit of paranoia. He destroyed his own most capable naval officers with his own hands. Zhou Yu then attacked and won decisively against an army that had already been broken from within before the first arrow was fired. In your own world, in competition, in business, in any environment where alliances matter, this principle translates to something specific. Before you confront a powerful opponent directly, study their relationships. Where is their existing tension? Where is their unspoken resentment? Where is there an advisor who feels undervalued, or an ally who feels taken for granted? You do not need to manufacture these things. They almost always already exist. You simply need to know where to look and how to let them develop on their own. Lesson 4. Make victory so obvious that resistance collapses. Sun Tzu wrote, "He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious." And beneath that, a deeper principle that most people miss entirely. The greatest victories in Sun Tzu's campaigns were often won not by fighting, but by making the outcome so inevitable, so overwhelmingly clear that his enemy simply stopped resisting. This is not weakness on the enemy's part. This is a profound psychological truth about human nature. People do not fight when they believe they have already lost. They fight when they believe there is still a chance, when the outcome is still uncertain, when hope, however small, still exists. Remove the hope, remove the uncertainty, make the outcome appear inevitable, and the fight ends before it begins. Sun Tzu achieved this through a specific sequence of moves before any major campaign. He would first isolate his enemy diplomatically, cutting off alliances, eliminating the possibility of reinforcement. Then he would visibly accumulate overwhelming force, not hiding it, but displaying it deliberately. Then he would move that force into position so perfectly that every avenue of escape or resistance was closed. And then he would offer terms. At that point, the rational choice was obvious. Resistance meant certain destruction. Surrender meant survival. And most enemies, when faced with that clarity, chose survival. This is the method that Sun Tzu called winning without fighting. Not because he avoided confrontation, but because he engineered situations where confrontation became irrational for his enemy. In your own life, this method is about building such an undeniable position in your career, in your reputation, in your expertise, that competing with you becomes obviously futile. Not through arrogance, through preparation so thorough and positioning so precise that the outcome speaks for itself before the contest begins. The person who has to fight hardest is the person who prepared least. The person who prepared most often wins without fighting at all. Open loop, but what we have discussed so far still involves your enemy making a choice. The fifth method removes that choice entirely, and this is the one Sun Tzu considered his most ruthless weapon of all. Lesson 5. Make your enemy destroy himself. Sun Tzu wrote, "Anger his general and make him erratic." 4 words that contain the darkest wisdom in the art of war. If you want to destroy someone, you do not need to lift a hand against them. You simply need to understand their psychology well enough to know what will make them act against their own interests. And then, with absolute patience and precision, you create the conditions that trigger exactly that behavior. This is not manipulation in the petty sense. This is strategic psychology at its highest and most devastating level. Every person has psychological triggers, pressure points that, when activated, cause them to abandon their strategy, override their intelligence, and act from pure emotion. Anger, fear, pride, jealousy, the need to prove something, the inability to appear weak. Sun Tzu studied these triggers the way an engineer studies structural weaknesses, not because he was cruel, but because understanding how people break is essential to understanding how they can be directed. The method works like this. You identify the psychological trigger of your target. You create a situation that activates it, and then you step back and watch them destroy their own position in response. An enemy who is proud cannot resist the bait of a public insult. An enemy driven by fear will overreact to a perceived threat. An enemy consumed by greed will take risks that a rational person would never take. An enemy with an ego too large for his strategy will abandon patience for the satisfaction of immediate action. You do not need to beat any of these people. You need to understand them well enough to let them beat themselves. There is a documented account of Sun Tzu applying this principle against a commander of the state of Qi, a man known for his arrogance and his furious temper. Rather than engaging him directly, Sun Tzu sent a series of small provocations, taunting messages, apparent retreats that looked like cowardice, public mockery designed to reach the commander's ears. The commander, predictably, abandoned his defensive position in a rage to pursue what he thought was a fleeing, demoralized enemy. He marched his army directly into a prepared ambush in a narrow valley. He had chosen the time and place of his own destruction and believed the entire time that the choice was his. Application: study the people around you, not superficially, but deeply. What do they need to believe about themselves? What would they sacrifice their strategy for? What insult could they not ignore? What bait could they not resist? You do not need to use this knowledge aggressively, but you need to have it because someone, somewhere, is already studying you the same way. Lesson 6: Starve your enemy. Before you strike Sun Tzu wrote, "A wise general makes a point of foraging on the enemy. One cartload of the enemy's provisions is equivalent to 20 of one's own." This lesson is about resources, and it is more brutal than it first appears. Sun Tzu understood something that modern strategists call attrition, the gradual exhaustion of an enemy's capacity to resist, not through direct confrontation, but through the systematic elimination of everything that sustains their power. An army that cannot eat, cannot fight. A business that cannot fund its operations, cannot compete. A person who is perpetually overwhelmed, financially stressed, and isolated from support cannot think clearly, act decisively, or maintain their position. You do not need to defeat a strong enemy. You need to wait for them to become weak. And if you are patient and skilled enough, you need to accelerate that process. Sun Tzu applied this on the battlefield through deliberate strategy. He would cut supply lines before engaging. He would destroy the enemy's capacity to resupply, reinforce, or retreat to a position of strength. By the time he arrived at the battlefield, his enemy had already been fighting for weeks against hunger, against uncertainty, against the psychological weight of knowing that help was not coming. The actual battle was almost a formality. In the modern world, this principle operates across every domain of competition. The competitor who controls access to key resources, talent, capital, distribution, relationships, does not need to defeat you in a direct contest. They simply need to ensure that you never have what you need to compete at full strength. The most dangerous opponents in any field are not the ones who attack you directly. They are the ones who quietly ensure that your foundation is eroding while appearing, on the surface, to be doing nothing at all. This is why Sun Tzu wrote so extensively about intelligence, about knowing your enemy's situation before they know yours. Because the strategist who understands where the enemy's resources come from and how to interrupt that flow has already won a war that the enemy doesn't yet know is being fought. Application. In any long-term competition, identify what your opponent needs to maintain their position, their key relationships, their access to resources, their reputation in specific circles, their ability to recruit allies. You do not need to destroy these things directly. Often, simply being present in those spaces, building relationships, establishing credibility, demonstrating consistent value, is enough to alter the landscape around them without a single confrontation. The strongest fortress falls when you control its water supply. Lesson 7. Become someone impossible to defeat. Sun Tzu wrote, "Invincibility lies in the defense. The possibility of victory lies in the attack." And then, the line that changes everything. One defends when his strength is inadequate. He attacks when it is abundant. The final method is not a tactic. It is not a technique you apply in a specific situation. It is a state of being that Sun Tzu considered the ultimate strategic achievement, becoming someone who cannot be destroyed, not invincible in the naive sense. No one is immune to all threats, but strategically invincible, built in such a way that attacking you produces worse outcomes for your attacker than leaving you alone, positioned in such a way that your enemies, even powerful ones, conclude that the cost of opposing you is too high. Sun Tzu called this condition invincibility through preparation, and he was very specific about what it required. First, it requires that you eliminate your own weaknesses before your enemy finds them. The general who knows his own vulnerabilities and addresses them before battle is very different from the general who discovers them under fire. One is strategic, the other is desperate. Second, it requires patience so absolute that others mistake it for passivity. Sun Tzu's greatest campaign sometimes involved months, even years, of positioning before a single decisive move. His contemporaries sometimes called him slow. History called him undefeated. Third, it requires that you build value so undeniable that destroying you would cost more than it would gain. The person who is deeply embedded in important relationships, who controls key knowledge or capabilities, who has built a reputation that others depend on, this person is not attacked easily, because attacking them creates too many enemies and too much instability. And fourth, and this is the most important, it requires that you never reveal your full capability. Sun Tzu was almost fanatical about this. He believed that the moment your enemy truly understands what you are capable of, you have lost a strategic advantage that can never be recovered. The unknown is always more intimidating than the known. Potential is always more threatening than demonstrated capability. The person who has shown everything they have is already at their ceiling. The person who has shown nothing has no ceiling at all. This is the ultimate form of defeating your enemy without fighting, not by attacking them, but by building yourself into something that they rationally choose never to attack, not out of respect, out of calculation. And that distinction between being respected and being strategically untouchable is the final lesson that Sun Tzu spent his entire life trying to teach. 7 methods, each one ruthless, each one precise. Control what your enemy believes, attack what he cannot defend, turn his own allies against him, make victory so obvious that resistance collapses. Create the conditions for him to destroy himself. Starve him before you strike, and build yourself into something impossible to defeat. None of these methods require a battlefield. None of them require brute force. None of them require you to be the strongest, the fastest, or the most aggressive person in the room. They require something far rarer: patience, observation, psychological intelligence, and the discipline to play a longer game than anyone around you is willing to play. Sun Tzu did not write The Art of War for warriors. He wrote it for strategists, for people who understood that the goal was never to fight well. It was to win completely, with minimal cost, maximum efficiency, and as little unnecessary conflict as possible. Here is your challenge for this week. Look at the most difficult challenge you are currently facing. The opponent, the obstacle, the situation that feels like it requires a direct confrontation. And ask yourself, which of these 7 methods applies? Is there a belief you could influence? A weakness you have not explored? A way to let the situation resolve itself without your direct involvement? The answer is almost always yes. You simply have not been thinking at Sun Tzu's level yet. If this video opened something in your thinking, subscribe to this channel, because every video we release goes deeper into the strategies that the most powerful minds in history actually used, not the sanitized motivational versions that everyone else teaches. The next video reveals something even more unsettling: the specific psychological weapon that Sun Tzu said was more powerful than any army, and that your enemies may already be using against you right now. Watch it next.